And welcome back to KTN News Desk. I'm Michael Karanja. Now, housing is one of those fundamental rights that every Kenyan or even African aspires to have, but has been in short supply. Well, in studio today, I'm joined by Mr. Femi Adewole from Shelter Afrique, who's the Director of Project Management. Now, Femi, just to start off, housing, human right, but short supply. Where do we start bridging that gap between the agent?
Right, the reality that we face in Kenya is one of growing need for housing. The latest researches show that we need to be producing about 150,000 new housing units just to bridge the current gap in terms of supply and demand. And that's before you even start thinking about growth in the population. The answer actually has to lie in the fact that there is no silver bullet. We need to be looking at a multiplicity of approaches to bridging that demand and supply imbalance. And that is what we are looking to do at Shelter Afrique by promoting the rental housing conference, which I suspect you want to talk to me about, as another weapon in a armory for addressing housing supply shortfalls in Kenya.
Before we get to rental, is it a case of where people are supplying houses that are a bit out of reach for most of the basket of where people actually looking for houses is?
Yes, it's a bit of that. There's a lot of supply at the upper end of the ladder, but even excluding that, we're just not building enough housing. The housing need spans across the economic spectrum. So yes, we have housing is at the upper end of the economic ladder, but we have a much more acute housing need at the bottom end of the economic ladder. And we try to see that as a continuum. We need to deal with housing need at every stage of the housing economic ladder.
About 2 months ago, Shelter Afrique came up with what I considered radical.
Yes.
And you came out, because everyone aspires to own a home, but you came out and said, perhaps owning a home is not the best way to address this matter, and actually people should focus more on developing more rental houses, and people should actually embrace that rental kind of space. Why is that?
Well, actually, it's not radical, it's realism. There are a number of realities that we see. The first, as I said, we need to build a large number of houses. The second reality is that most people want to own their homes. We acknowledge that reality. The third reality is the fact that most people can't afford their home, to own a home at some point in their lives. Okay? So the issue then is, if your strategy and your policy is all about home owning, how do you address the need of those who want to own a home, but they're in that time in their lives when they can't afford to own a home? Where do they live? And that is where we think the rental option comes in, that we need to mainstream that as a realistic option, that at a point in the life of most people, having a rental housing that is safe, that is affordable, that is good quality, has to be a central plank of a good housing policy.
I guess the reason why rental has become a main issue is because rental prices keep fluctuating, and right now, even areas like in Nairobi, places like South C, South B, rental prices have gone above the reach of most people, forcing people to look for more houses. So if rental is kind of the answer, where do we create that stopgap measure where rental houses become affordable?
Right. Okay, let me kind of step back a little bit. Rental housing already exists. In Nairobi today, about 86% of the population live in rental housing. I think what we're trying to do is, one, to do two things: formalize that sector. Secondly, regulate it. Thirdly, get more investment into that sector. And as you do those three, a number of things will happen. Number one, you will find that it becomes a sector of choice in terms of people addressing their housing needs. We think that as you increase supply because of additional capital inflow into that space, we're likely to see prices dropping. The second is the fact that the fluctuation that you refer to will become regulated and controlled just by ordinary market forces. We want to see the large number of what I call single property landlords replaced by well-organized, well-operated institutional landlords who provide very good service to their tenants.
Right. And just as we just come too close to this, now next month you're organizing the African Housing Conference, where I guess rental is where you're going to be drumming this issue. From government, is it an area where you want now, where there's more control over the kind of prices landlords can put on their rental units?
We wouldn't go that far. I think the starting point for us is that government has to step into this space and recognize rental housing as a valid and a viable part of the housing policy. So this is the first objective. The second objective, that in doing that you have to put in front a number of infrastructure, and the first one is regulation. And part of regulation is about meeting the needs of the investors, but also protecting the tenant. The tenants have to be protected from abuse, from a security of tenancy, that you can't just be thrown out of your house without a proper legal process, and protected economically, that they have some predictability about their rental income.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That has been Mr. Femi Adewole, just shedding more light on the rental reality of where we are currently in Kenya as a housing market. And I'll hand you back over to Edith, who has some interesting news about marathons in Baringo.